Learn from the world's best all in one place with Masterclass, the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. Masterclass always has great offers during the holidays, sometimes up to as much as 50% off. Head over to masterclass.com/Spotify for the current offer. That's up to 50% off at masterclass.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
Hello, hope you're all well and had a half-decent weekend. As you can tell, I've got a bit of a cough. I'll try to mute if it's possible, but hey, it wouldn't be Christmas without some sort of bug with it. It's the busy period before Christmas right now, with last-minute food shopping, anxious checks on late deliveries, and frantic gift wrapping. My partner's actually in the living room doing some right now, as the big day is just a couple of days away. But hopefully you still found time for a bit of FPL this weekend, and if you're listening or watching to this, thanks so much for finding a bit of extra time for us too. Here for a rapid turnaround pod due to the proximity to Christmas and, of course, how soon the next game week will be upon us on Boxing Day. I'm joined once more by Sam. It was obviously nice to have Mark and Alex on last week, but always great to be united with your one true podcast partner at Christmas time. Oh, what a lovely film that would possibly be. How are you, mate? Good weekend? And did you have a good Christmas party last Monday? We were thinking you may be about kind of 10 pints in by the time we finished, about kind of 10:30.
Yeah, that was about right. Podcast partners are for life, not just for Christmas, Tom. Remember that. But yeah, really enjoyed last week's podcast when I did get around to watching it or listening to it the next morning on a bit of a hangover. But no, had a great time at the party. Obviously, Semenyo didn't get me any points and went off injured whilst I was out drinking. So that was a little bit of a dampener. But the week has gone really, really well since that point. Enjoyed the pod. I thought you guys did an excellent job as expected. And I was a little bit nervous I wouldn't get my seat back for this week after it. So I'm really glad that you've invited me back on the show. And thankfully, I've now got my third green arrow in a row. So I'm actually starting to at least show that I've got some sort of FPL ability that to back up being on the show in the first place. So yeah, thank everyone and everything for that. In the meantime, though, we are who got the assist. Again, I'll reiterate Tom's point. Thank you so much if you're listening, watching this one, especially so close to Christmas. I know it can get really busy, so we really appreciate it. On today's pods, we'll be doing team updates quickly. Then due to the quick turnaround, it's just the preview ahead of the next weekend today. Our reactions to the game week just been. Both of us used 3 free transfers this week, but there's debate as to whether or not they were successful. We'll be finding out in just a moment's time. Then straight into the preview and the big talking point, of course, with Saka. Not confirmed, but it's looking really likely that it's a pretty significant injury, and we need to discuss best replacements and what we're both going to be doing with him sat in our sides. Then, of course, best transfers, best captains, and bold claims ahead of game week 18. It's Sunday, the 22nd of December. All games are played. A fantastic finale for game week 17, by the way. 9-goal thriller. What a game. And we're going into the game week reviews, aren't we, Tom?
We are indeed, and you're up first because you've had a stellar week to, as you said, complete your hat trick of green arrows.
Yeah, lovely. Hopefully it doesn't stop here because there's still loads and loads of work yet to do. Just snuck inside the top 700k with that Lewis Hall extra bonus point right at the death, which was lovely. It's nice when it goes your way and doesn't get removed from you. 89 points from 900k up to just inside 700. So another 200k wiped off the rank, which is lovely. Returns around my back three as well. So Hall, Robinson both got clean sheets. Gabriel got the assist. Raya got a save point. So even that wasn't the end of the world. In midfield, nothing except Salah just being the most inevitable man in the entire universe at this point. Even at 160% EO, that still gave me a rank rise of about 100k. And then Isak, of course, one of my 3 free transfers, 17 points. And it definitely, well, it was close at one point, but it definitely did pay off making those 3 free moves. Robinson was the other, alongside Ahmad. I would have played Semenyo if I had held on to Rodgers instead of Ahmad. So I've worked out, I think it was 17 points, plays 25. So I am up by 8 points on the 3 moves so far. Obviously, we count them over several weeks. So who knows, it might come back to bite me. But currently, really happy with the moves I made. Isak in particular just felt such a necessity to get done as quickly as possible, and he just looks like in the form of his life right now. So very glad I brought him in, and his ownership is only going to rise from here, right, Tom?
Yeah, definitely. Just a few people said in the chat already about Isak. Am I the only one without him? I know there are a few people online as well mentioning that one. And yes, simply, he does definitely seem like one where, yes, there were the 2 really, really good fixtures have gone, and there's definitely perhaps a feeling, if you don't own him at the moment, that maybe you can just leave it now. But I would say that Villa, Man United, and Spurs are the next 3. None of those teams worry me from an attacking point of view for him. Right. And so I wouldn't kind of think, the boat's gone. I can kind of understand where that comes from. We've all fallen prey to that. But the effective ownership is only going to go in one direction. And if he does replicate this this kind of performance, which he looks like he's able to, then your rank is only going to suffer unless you kind of compete against him effectively, which is hard to do when you've got a player performing like this. So yeah, good transfers for you. For me, same free transfers. That's really hard to say, isn't it?
It is.
Transfers used.
This is why they didn't do it in the past. It was 2. It was easier to say.
Exactly, 2 FT. 3 FT used. So I binned off Davis Robinson. That was good. So 6-point gain. Cunha sold him for Isak. So yeah, there's a gain there. And then I sold Slanky for Raul Jimenez. So I ended up with a 5-point profit. Basically purely because Davis got the 0, Robinson got the 6. It's like Cunha and Slanky both got 9 pointers after selling them. And Isak 17 was not followed by Raul, who got a 0. So a bit of a Pyrrhic victory there. But I mean, obviously, Mo Salah I don't know if he actually did save the game week, to be honest, just because everybody owned him and most people captained him. I know that Palmer was over 100% EO. And
just barely, wasn't he?
Yeah, but I mean, really, it was kind of it was obviously lovely to see your captain score 40 plus, but it's also kind of fairly immaterial, really. It was all nice to have those points in the bank, I guess.
Yeah. It did help a bit on the I was watching it as the points came in. Like, it did nudge me up a few K here and there, so it does make a little bit of a difference at least.
Yeah, there's a little bit, I suppose, which is always good. Every little helps, as they say. Elsewhere, had the whole 7 points. I've actually got 87 points rather than 86. I didn't update my team sheet. And I've left Mikalenko's clean sheet on the bench for the millionth time this season. But hey, I was never playing him against Chelsea. So yeah, not too bad. The Gabriel assist still makes me laugh, by the way. Much needed, because just hit his leg, look round. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, definitely meant that.
And then he kind of like shielded off the player to make sure that he had a good shot at goal. So that's the assist, really.
That's the assist. Getting his ample frame in the way. The block assist. I like those. Yeah. All right. 2 things actually, which are randomly shout outs, which come from my kind of team this week. One, shout out to a friend of the pod, James FPL, good lad we both know from meets actually. I've been having a bit of banter with him all weekend, so he was one of the Fulham fans who was saying, Jimenez definitely plays this game, and then Muniz comes in next. And it seems like basically Silva followed suit with all the other managers out there playing Saints and decided on the B team, which is whatever, is what it is. Yeah, not very nice to see Raul come on and get booked though. That's always really annoying. And the other thing on Cunha, shout out to the friend of the pod FPL Fairy, Steve, who I spotted got Cunha to like his post on Instagram and mentioned FPL managers too on a recent post, which just shows how we're making inroads into real players' minds, us little nerds over here playing this silly game with shirts on a screen. Joseph Robinson just asked in the chat if he thinks we'll get a Boxing Day out of Cunha. It's just one to keep an eye on, really. Like, no one seems to know. Who knows if the FA is going to be working or if it's in an administrative black hole somewhere. I think that Mark Jobling over at Fantasy Football Scout points out there tends to be a bit of a gap between when the charge is made and when a ban actually comes into force. So you might get a couple of games more out of him, but definitely kind of one to keep an eye on. You should have a decent bench by this point, so you probably be all right. But yeah, easy game against United next. So you probably ideally want to play.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I can't remember what else I had to say here. Yeah, Ahmad's. I had Ahmad versus Matoma, and decided to play Matoma over Ahmad. I know you played Ahmad after buying him this week. I kind of still
good
left on the bench
this week.
Yeah, he keeps doing it, doesn't he?
The assist that he deserved, I think.
Yeah, I just thought West Ham was a better fixture than Matoma's. Had a really bright start, but just been rubbish since. So he's definitely on chopping block soon. So 86 in top 100k, top 500k, which is it's always nice to go into Christmas with a green arrow, isn't it? At the end of the day, I feel like I've just been yo-yoing around. Kind of the lower reaches, like below 500k for quite a while. So hopefully this gets sustained going forward.
Yeah, you've broken through now, and you've got a good-looking team. So I think we can sustain this.
And now it's very much a case of what the hell do we do with Saka? So Saka went off. For those who haven't seen it yet, it was about 19, 20 minutes in, hit a crossfield pass. Stood up, hit a crossfield pass, and then kind of just stopped immediately, grabbed his kind of the back of his leg and put his hand up, and then kind of sat down, and then got subbed off pretty much immediately for Trossard. That worries me, and we both saw the video. I sent it to you earlier on of yesterday or today. I can't remember which one it was. Of him leaving in crutches. So I mean, we've seen Saka's extraordinary powers of recovery in the past. I think that's fair to say. And everything we say is obviously caveated here by the fact that he could be absolutely fine. With Saka, he's one of those players you just can't put it past him. Yeah, you can get bugger all from Arteta. He did actually say it doesn't look good, which is unusual. But next week, who knows if he might be like, he could train tomorrow. We'll see. But I think it is safe to say, Sam, that he might be out, and it might mean that we've suddenly got a bit of a gap in the template to fill, which is always quite exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting and it's quite daunting as well, because there is a huge drop off after Saka. As long as you've already got your Palmer and your Salah in situ, which a lot of us already do, the drop off from Saka, no matter who you go to, you're probably sacrificing expected points as well. There's no one that is matching Saka for what the output we'd expect is. So it's going to be a downgrade, but there are loads of different options that you can go to. And you can also take money out of that position altogether. There are some really good or decent enough, cheap options, 5 million less than Saka, and you can really spread the cash. So we'll see a high variance swing from that position in the next couple of game weeks. Now, one thing to note is that, first of all, I don't think we'll get an Arteta press conference at all until the Thursday, which would be the deadline day. And obviously with the deadline being at, I think it's 11 o'clock on the Thursday, there's a good chance that the press conference would come after the deadline anyway. So even if we got a press conference from him, it would maybe be after the deadline, even if we got an honest answer. And then the other thing, which maybe goes in the opposite direction, is we know for a fact that, I think it was Zinchenko spilled the beans on this a few weeks ago, that Arteta does throw curveballs intentionally in terms of players who are injured getting on team buses and all of those sort of shenanigans, making sure that players are missing out from training photos, all of that. So would it be the most shocking thing in the entire universe to say, okay, he went off at 20 minutes. Everyone's going to think he's got a really bad injury. I'm going to say it doesn't look good. And I'm going to hand him some crutches. Just limp a little at the end. Just go and limp.
Don't do this.
I'm telling you, though, it's possible. And it's Not likely, obviously. All the signs point towards a pretty serious injury, and I will probably be needing to sell him as well. We all probably will. But if any manager, maybe bar Eddie Howe, who's also a sneaky, sneaky man, if anyone was going to do it, it's Arteta, and just throw a bit of a curveball. We'll see. But I'm just saying it's not the craziest thing that could happen. But I think realistically, most of us are going to be selling him. Obviously, we're going to talk about replacements, but there are different price brackets that you can replace him with. And it's worth noting that the more expensive ones come with the caveat that you then can't use that extra money saved elsewhere, like upgrading to a Trent or upgrading to an Isak. So some people will be going a different route altogether, and not because they think that Sarr can match Bruno, for instance, but because of what they can do with the extra money.
Yeah, and the beauty of this year is obviously that we've got the free transfers in a different state for most people. Even though I think there has been quite a solid sort of template with the triple premium mids, the edge pieces around them have still been quite different, and a lot of people are in very different situations when it comes to those, which has knock-on effects, be it 0.2, 0.3, which takes you away from doing what maybe the crowd are doing and maybe what's going on. So just to introduce this bit, I suppose, the game week preview, which what we'll cover today, is the knee-jerk, best transfers, bold claims, and best captains, and obviously the first bit is it about Saka. So Santa's Saka sales as we move towards Boxing Day. Yes, I'm here all week. And I mean, it's so easy, isn't it, to fall into a conspiracy theory mindset with Saka. And I do think that it is valid if you can hold it this week. So say you've got Ahmad who can come off the bench for him. Maybe you just leave him and see what happens. I mean, that's definitely a valid way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is playing on my mind. We'll come into our teams later on in the pod, but I do have an 8th attacker that I'm pretty happy playing this week. The problem is, if it does look like a bad injury, obviously I've used a little bit of cheek to suggest that maybe there's a bit of faking going on, but it does look pretty bad. So it is likely that you've got an opportunity there to move to another player that in a lot of cases will be on penalties, 90-minute men, with good data. And most of our 8th attackers going into this week won't be as good as the player that we could sell Saka for if given the opportunity, because there's just so much you can do with that money. Yeah. So a lot of us will have maybe a João Pedro or Morgan Rogers or an Amad Diallo, Semenyo as well. There's all of these options that could be sat on your bench, but whilst they're not bad options to be playing by any means, there's a reason they were on your bench in the first place. And you can probably get more out of some of the alternatives that are a bit closer to Saka's price point that otherwise you wouldn't have been going for. So look, you can roll the transfer. There's definitely value there. But of course, we've got rotation in this fixture period anyway. If you're already going one bench deep and you're putting Saka on your bench, you've got a little bit less safety net, I guess, if anything else were to go wrong during the game week and a player just ended up not playing.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's two or maybe three definite things you do with that money if you don't own these players to kind of create some sort of decision tree. So up to Palmer, if you don't own already, that feels like a no-brainer, doesn't it? He just feels like one obvious one. Salah is a beyond obvious one if you don't own him already. Looking at you, Andy Martin. Definitely do that. He's fairly good. I think it's fair to say, that old Salah bloke. And I think maybe to finance Isak as well is perhaps on the agenda. I do know, as I said earlier on, there probably are a few naysayers when it comes to Isak still. But right now, given where the player is, I think that one again feels like a bit of a priority. There is another thing you could possibly do. I think it may be a bit too much of a jump for most people, but you could finance Haaland back with that money, couldn't you? I mean, if you were in that position, if that was in front of you, Sam, if that was on the menu, would you be selecting it when the rater comes over?
You know what? I did have a brief look at that as soon as you told me that this, because I was at another party last night. I promise I don't go partying all the time, by the way. It's just that
I'm so popular. I'm just so popular.
I know. Yeah. But I was at a party. You told me, oh, Saka's gone off injured and it looks like a bad one. So the immediate thing I did was, how much money can I take out of Saka and can I get to Haaland somehow? Even if it was for someone like a Jackson, let's say he got the 5th yellow today. Didn't happen anyway. I do think there is an argument to say that if you're convinced that Saka's out a while, Haaland and City with the fixtures coming, you could go back there, and a lot of people just will be pretty stubborn about it, knowing how bad City have been recently. But fixtures do beget form quite often. It's a big stretch. I don't think many managers are going to be able to do it unless you've got 3 or 4 transfers ready to really make some moves. But then you're downgrading someone else somewhere as well. And I'm just not sure it's that viable. I can't make a combination work I'm happy with. And in my case, I'd need to take a -8 to get there. There's no way I could do it from -4. So for me, it's just not happening. But if you do have 3 or 4 free transfers ready to go, and maybe there's a way you can upgrade. Maybe you've got a Watkins, let's say, just hanging around and not getting the minutes. Maybe you can squeeze it, but honestly, I can't see a combination that I like at the moment.
No, yeah, absolutely. I've long disliked but if you're paying that much for a player, why aren't you captaining him? I mean, I'm assuming you're in Salah, and I can't see this week past that captaining him probably as well. 19 versus West Ham. So it is an awful lot of money to be paying for a differential, and it does kind of, as we kind of noted in pods ad nauseam, really impact your team structure, and it just doesn't feel like it sort of works. Now we're on the other side of the fence, and all that Haaland money has been dispersed throughout our team to bring the kind of the floor of quality upwards in our 15s. I can see it being a really interesting play if you're maybe in the millions and you're not particularly happy with where you are, you need to properly differentiate to get your season going again. I can understand that logic completely. I know there'll be a few who do that, but it just doesn't seem like it's kind of for us, I suppose. So taking the temperature a little bit on socials, before a lot of the kind of the bigger voice have had their say, that early sort of sentiment seems to be, in terms of if we are replacing Saka, Bruno or Odegaard, with some Trent involvement here too, somewhere along the line. So is this kind of the ticket to buying Trent back into our teams? There was definitely a moment in the game this afternoon or this evening, where the Trent cross, for example, where I don't know what it was, but my socials just went. Everyone seems to be like, "Oh, how do I get Trent back in? Is Saka? Everyone seems to be kind of on FPL.team or on their FPL app, but being like, right, okay, what do I need to do here?"
Then he conceded 3.
Yeah. So I mean, and he had loads of time to put that cross in, didn't he? He had all the time in the world.
Beautiful.
It was, but I mean, that we haven't learned anything new. Trent is good at crossing a football.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's not really insightful. But yes, at the same time, I agree with you that it's one of those that does seem to be kind of in the zeitgeist. So yeah, Bruno versus Odegaard. Let's start there, and then maybe work into Trent afterwards. If it is between those two, and I know there's loads of others, but we'll come on to Diaz and Jota, Son, Maddison, and maybe even Foden as well in the mix. Very good video by FPL Pricey out there, running through eight potential replacements, which I enjoyed actually earlier on while I was prepping for this pod. I didn't do any prep. I just kind of copied what you said and I've slightly rephrased it. Asked the AI, how do I rephrase what Pricey said here to sound clever? No, I kid. I do have something to say. But yes, there we go. I mean, where are you on this at the moment as a start of 10?
Yeah, so I do think there are plenty of really decent alternatives, and it does depend what you think you can do with the excess money. Odegaard, I'll start with, because I've seen a lot of people talking about him, but the data isn't really that spectacular yet. So I think it's a bit more of a punt for me anyway than Bruno is. Bruno, we know the role he's playing in the new system now. It is advanced. The data, especially in the last 2 weeks, has been even better than we maybe imagined. And he is Mr. Consistent. We know he's on set pieces. We know he's on penalties. Odegaard will be on penalties if Saka is out, but it does come with the asterisk that, okay, you're bringing in a pretty attacking player and maybe he takes a step up because Saka's out. But Saka being out himself, being a really big creator for Arsenal, probably damages them slightly going forwards anyway. So I'm really trying to weigh up in my mind whether or not it's net positive or negative for Odegaard's kind of attacking threats if the player that he's got the best chemistry with on the pitch is undoubtedly Saka. They link up really well down that right-hand side. if you play a Martinelli or a Trossard over there, maybe even a Gabriel Jesus at times could play on the right-hand side. All of these things are possible. I'm sure they will have a good link up with him because they're all stellar players. They've played together for a long time. But will it be as automatic as that Saka-Ødegaard relationship? Now, even if that is a slight downgrade, Ødegaard, there will probably be more emphasis on him producing attacking output. So not necessarily just goals and assists, but getting more involved in the final phase of the build-up and final phase towards the shot on goal. So I think there will be an uptick, but it's whether or not that uptick is large enough versus someone like a Bruno. And right now, if I had to pin my colours to the mast, I do genuinely think that despite Man United's performance today, Bruno did get good data, by the way, always did. But I just feel like there's a little bit more reliability about that. I think we know what we're getting a bit more with Bruno, whereas with Ødegaard, because of the injury to Saka more than anything else, there is maybe that slight question mark. I think it's going to be net positive overall, but I still think Bruno comes out very slightly ahead for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm the other way. So my favourite of the two is Ødegaard. So without, I suppose, thinking about it, without Saka, the front three I think becomes Martinelli or Trossard, Havertz and Jesus, like all kind of fitting around that sort of. They'll fit in somehow. But what's missing with that? One key word: creativity, as you're kind of touching on with no Saka. Like none of the options to replace Saka have anywhere near the profile. And echoing what you said just now and on your video as well. I do think there's going to be a net change in how Ødegaard's asked to operate. And this might happen. I stress it. It might. We don't know. So Arteta could see a different route to fixing this. Maybe Calafiori becomes like some sort of rampaging Gvardiol-esque left back. But 2 seasons ago, you saw Ødegaard playing what might be termed as a 10 role, effectively, in the absence of Saka sometimes, or in that kind of particular config, in front of a double pivot. And this year, I suppose that would turn to being Rice and then Partey or Marino. That probably would be how that would fit together. A couple of years ago, he scored 212 points. Lots of double-digit hauls were scored in that. And what fueled that was a massive overperformance in XG per shot. But what's really interesting, I did some data digging earlier on, is why. So if you really look at FBref, you go into the shooting stats, they records average distance of shot as well. And in that year, in 2020-23, he scored 15 goals, his career best by a long shot. And his distance from goal for shooting was on average 19.2 metres. In his Arsenal career, otherwise, it's been 20 plus. So last year, 20.2, a couple of years ago, 21, 20.5 the year before that. This year, he's not been around very long to factor in the data that's there. He has been doing it from short distance, but he's not been fit for long enough. What this does suggest, though, is that if he's closer to goal, he's got the quality to find that finish. And this might be an opportunity for him to do that if, and this is the gamble part of it that you kind of also touched on, he's deployed in that more advanced role or entrusted to take more responsibility for end products. Like he's, I suppose, a little bit of an assisting the assister, David Silva sort of thing right now.
Modric vibe.
If he's given that kind of more advanced is kind of the wrong way of putting it, but if he's kind of given more responsibility in terms of end products in Saka's absence, that's what we could possibly see. Plus, good chance he takes penalties, and he also will be on corners, I think, from Saka's side. So there's sort of past evidence of what can happen if he's deployed in that sort of more end product focused role, and educated guessing about what the front three could possibly be sans Saka. All of that stuff, so lacking creativity, does make me currently favour a crab across to Ødegaard at the moment. As we said, a bit of an assister role. Last year it was all about GCA goal creating actions, whereas kind of the year before it was more him doing them himself. The X minutes may take a hit potentially if more is asked of him, so you may see Ranieri coming on the 75th minute. But yeah, I mean, I do quite like it, especially for the next few. Realistically, I don't know how long Saka's going to be out for, but realistically, I do think we're going to kind of get to kind of game week or end of January, early February time and be thinking, how do we get this guy back? I think it's game week 25. We've got Leicester away. But the next 4, Ipswich at home, Brentford away, Brighton away, Spurs at home, and Aston Villa at home. Let's throw that one in as well. None of those games worry worry me from an attacking point of view. I do think I think you said in your video as well that we're kind of good to score 2 or 3 goals in those games. And I do really want an Arsenal attacking option, I suppose. And I think that Ødegaard does have that sort of mix of X minutes and potential responsibility for more end productive type stuff than we've seen, that make him I guess the pick in my eyes right now. So yeah, I think that's where I'm going. That's kind of where I'm going right now. We'll see maybe if I do change my mind going forward, but I do quite like going with Mo. Yeah, so that's where I am at the moment with that, between those two.
I like it. Yeah, that was really convincing and good data digging there as well on Ødegaard. Yeah, I have to say at the start I was favouring Bruno. Yeah, he's brought it back a little bit more level pegging. So yeah, very interesting, Tom. On that note, there are other options, of course. How do you feel about Foden? Just an interesting one.
Yeah, it's kind of in the same bracket as Haaland for me. Like good fixtures. I was obviously done a goal this weekend, which is of interest. Distressed asset as well. So down, he's down 0.4, isn't he? He's 9.1 at the moment, and it's worth noting that if he's on the pitch, his XGI is still pretty good. You're looking at kind of an average of sort of 0.6, 0.7, I believe I saw.
The
other day.
0.2 xg per 90, 0.38 xa. So yeah, around 0.6 overall. Really decent.
Yeah, and again, the next 5, if there is ever going to be a time that Man City do pull their finger out, this might be it. With quite, especially game week 19 versus Leicester, I'd be shocked if Van Nistelrooy makes it to the end of the season, to be honest with you. But that game, owning a City attacking asset, that could be absolute gangbusters, couldn't it? So yeah, I do really like looking at Foden too. There's a lot of unpredictability about City at the moment, and they do seem like a bit of a wounded animal. But what is the old adage about a wounded animal backs into a corner? It lashes out. So I can definitely get behind it. I think you were fairly warm on it as well, weren't you? We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah, I am pretty warm on it. It is a bit punty because it's a shot in the dark that they do start turning the corner now. But if they're ever going to, with the fixtures they've got around the corner, it's got to happen sooner rather than later. Like obviously, it's kind of interesting. It's fascinating watching City fall apart the way they have in recent weeks, and we're all trying to figure out exactly what element has kind of crashed in their hard drive and everything's just broken all around it. But I think it is, like Pep said at the end, it's a million little bits and bobs, and they need to figure out each one of them individually to get back to their very best. So is that going to happen at home to Everton? Everton have been keeping a lot of clean sheets recently, obviously kept Chelsea out today. It's not a guarantee that City do bounce back, but over the next 5, looking at the fixtures, there's enough there that you'd like to think that just the raw talent and the sheer attacking power that they've got will be able to dismantle 2 or 3 of those sides. And okay, you would expect most of the points to come through Haaland, but Foden at times has been an extremely explosive asset. Obviously has not been anywhere near his best this season, but his minutes have really been given an uptick in recent weeks. They're relying on him a lot more. And to be at the end of the Aston Villa game, 2-0 down, still fighting for it, still chasing the goal, picked up the ball, ran straight back to the centre circle immediately with it. He's still got his head in the game. And I do think that with the data he's got, it would be surprising to see this barren run for City and for Foden continue through this patch of fixtures. I guess it's just for me whether or not for that money, 9.1, which is more than Ødegaard, more than Bruno. He's not on penalties. The data is actually worse than Bruno so far. Is it worth taking the risk just because they've got better fixtures? I don't know. It's one I'm really messing around with at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it really could be. I mean, all of these players thus far do fall into the category. In fact, all the ones we're talking about right now do fall into the category of when you buy them, there'll be a dice man for you. Maybe Bruno won't, but I think it's very unlikely unless you're in an FPL analytics league. So any of these players do fulfill the criteria of being low owned. Most of them, because they're in the consideration set, do have okay fixtures. It's just that Cities do seem to be the best. So a very good pick again. Along the kind of buying Haaland, if you are thinking about doing that line of logic, a maybe less sort of structurally destructive one too.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So that could be the way you do it. because it's long been flagged that these next 4 or 5 for City are great, and maybe Foden is way of doing it. Don't know what happens with kind of KDB as well, kind of hanging around. I know I was speaking to, I think it's FPL Redondo on the Blue Sky the other day, and he was saying, I think Kevin De Bruyne would be a really good kind of pump. For me, it's just the minutes that worry me.
Yeah, I just can't back it.
Yeah. Yeah, again, a good option. Over at Liverpool, Diaz and then Jota came off the bench as well. Obviously, if you're kind of thinking, well, okay, well, does that mean logically, because he came off the bench last game, Jota then plays Leicester? I mean, Leicester is the game at the moment, and I do feel a bit, and we'll come on to Trent in a minute, a bit sort of naked right now, going in with just Salah, even though we'll capture them, so technically I've got 2 players. Either of these guys tickle your fancy? Szoboszlai as well had a good game, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I think with Szoboszlai, it's just not consistent enough. There's not enough raw XG, I suppose, attacking output to make me want him as part of what is a very precious midfield 5 at the moment. To squeeze him in feels quite tricky without compromise. I do like Diaz and Jota to an extent. As I mentioned in my own video as well, I'm just a little bit cautious about X minutes. It's always difficult to guess minutes going into this period of fixtures, but you would think, using logic based on today, Jota comes in from the start because he got the rest this week, and maybe a Gakpo comes out. But then also Diaz played so well that does he therefore get the next game as well? And then your logic kind of gets mixed up, and you start giving yourself a narrative that suits the player you want to bring in, whether or not it makes actual sense. And I can just see myself getting kind of like tied up in knots trying to figure out Jota in particular, but to a certain lesser extent, Luis Diaz, their minutes over this next run of fixtures, not just for the Leicester game, which I think for what it's worth, if you pick either of them, you're probably going to get points out of it, even if they only get 20 or 30 minutes. But after that week, you're going to be faced with the same question again, and then again, and then again. And it's just going to become really shaky very quickly if you haven't picked the correct one straight away. And then you'll probably dive from one to another, and then the other one gets a start, and it's just impossible to predict at the moment. So as much as I would love to, I personally don't know if I can confidently go there, even if for this week I have a good gut feeling about Jota.
Yeah, it definitely feels like kind of right fixture, wrong time, effectively, doesn't it, for both of them? And if you, again, this kind of keys into the whole sort of thrust of the season. If you are sat there with 3, 4, 5 free transfers, then definitely, if you've got nothing to do except to remove Saka this week and you're happy with the rest of your team, then absolutely be our guest. Go in for a Jota versus Leicester. I mean, that's kind of the optimal thing to do. If you're in a different situation like we are, with 1 free transfer and trying to think about longevity with the pick you're taking, even like a Foden is kind of a cut above a Diaz or Jota in that scenario, because you've got probably a decent chance of him starting at least 4 or 5 of the next good fixtures, or if you're looking kind of narrowly over Christmas, 2 of 3 of those. Whereas with the Diaz or Jota, you simply don't know. I do think that Jota will come in to be that number 9 eventually, but you also kind of saw Diaz fielded as a nominal number 9 tonight. And he scored a couple of goals. So it is one of those where, do I want the continuing headache with one of those players, despite there being a really good fixture this week? And we'll talk about Trent in a minute. Is Trent kind of therefore the option from a next minute's point of view? Possibly, if you want to go down the Liverpool route. Final thing, Dan in the chat has just said he's favouring Kulusevski or Maddison. Also, Son in the mix too. Spurs, I mean, they're not boring, are they? they do loads of goals. Maddison, bloody hell. I mean, I have not seen a single. I'm sure that will change this week. I have not seen a single team with Maddison in. Team with Maddison in across both socials, the good place and the bad place. Averaging 5.7 points per game at the moment. In the top 5 for midfielders in terms of overall kind of points scored. Like, nowhere. I just don't. I have not seen this coming. But from being sort of benchy fodder to where he is now, admittedly, again, went off after kind of just before the hour, but the couple of goals against Southampton, the couple of goals against City have really catapulted him into a lot of people's thinking. There is Son hanging around, there's Kulusevski, and Spurs are still performing very well in terms of the team XG. I mean, surely we can't be writing them off as such as kind of being a possibility to buy from for our Saka replacements.
Oh no, you definitely can't write them off. I mean, yeah, knowing the team XG that they've got, you've stated correctly there, extremely high. Even today, where Spurs fans will come out that game absolutely hating life, but from an FPL point of view, they've just scored 3 goals against the second best defense in the league. So yeah, that's gold dust to someone looking for an attacking asset. The problem so far this season with Spurs has been, and we've both fallen victim to it at times, is getting the right Spurs asset at the right time where they are spreading around the points. Brennan has got plenty. Maddison's obviously now on 13 attacking returns, including 8 goals in that as well. Son has got 11. Solanke, I think, is on 9 or 10 now, maybe even more. I'm not sure. But they have been spreading them around. And what that means, even though the attacking returns are good, it does mean the bonus is probably shared more often than not. Now, Maddison could be not the cheat code, but the one that kind of comes out on top of all of them, because he's also really good on the bonus points because of his creativity too. So if he can keep going with the attacking returns and ticking along at the rate he is, considering the data is also really good, by the way, 0.72 XGI per 90 is very, very strong for what is effectively a CAM. Including 0.36 XG, again, very strong for his position. It's just a bit of a gamble on those minutes, and he does get taken off early and often first when things aren't going Spurs' way. He's usually the fall guy. So if you see that happening a little bit more often over the next run of games, then maybe he's not the guy. But all of us have ignored him all season long so far. And like you said, he's in the top 5 midfielders right now, and none of us have ever owned him. So he's doing something right. It's just a bit, I don't know why I felt this way, but last season I felt it a bit with Solanke. You almost don't want to watch the game. You don't want to watch how he's doing. You just want to sort of have a look at the end. And, yeah. And I just like count the points at the end. And I don't want to know how many minutes he got. If I own him, if he got 20 minutes at the end, I don't want to know it. I just want to know whether he got the goal or got the assist. And with Maddison, he feels like the guy that even if he did only get 10 minutes at the end or 60 at the start, then he's probably come away with a goal or an attack and return of some sort anyway. So it defies FPL logic, but he's a decent enough price point and they're so attacking and he is so attacking. Maybe it does just make sense. And honestly, I'd pick him over Son right now.
I mean, he's I think he's I'm pretty sure I said earlier. I think he's like 5th or 6th for overperformance this year as well.
Yeah.
So it kind of tallies, I suppose, to that extent. A lot of kind of quality. He's got a lot of quality goals in what he does. Spurs' fixtures, I mean, there's nothing really to write home about, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not kind of the best. I think a lot of it kind of is predicated on them being a very attacking team. Forest next, obviously a good game against Wolves in 19, Newcastle in 20, and then the North London Derby in 21. So it's not like you're buying into a group of great fixtures. You are buying a player who is surfing the crest of a wave in terms of returns. But there's all those things that you just said, Sam. And those things, I think, put me off. And I also think that the same applies to Son. The same probably applies to like a Kulusevski or something like that. That it's difficult to nail down the talisman with Spurs a little bit, and it kind of feels like in some circumstances, if fixtures are really good, then I'd be here saying, right, okay, I need a piece of that pie. I don't really care who it is. I'll be doing that, and that's what I do. That's what I have with Solanke for a little while. When they had kind of Ipswich, Bournemouth, and Bournemouth actually is not a good game, but they had Ipswich and Southampton across a decent stretch. Now I think that they are a team that you can actually kind of avoid a little bit, as wild as that kind of is to say, despite their numbers being good in terms of the underlying, and despite a couple of their players coming to the fore. A player like Kulusevski, I know Dan in the chat said he was going there. Absolutely fine. Like, you've got a decent chance of points ticking through. I think it's 3 goals in a row for Kulusevski.
Yeah.
A really good player to watch. And those two things can
Great
actually go
goal today as
together.
well.
Yeah. So those two things can go together for you. But it's just not really quite where I want to go. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's so many options. They're all kind of low at the moment, going to be low EO when you buy them in. I do think that Odegaard is kind of the way that the top one, and then I kind of like Foden as number two. As an Ahmad owner, I know this shouldn't have an impact. As an Ahmad owner, I'm kind of less keen on Bruno, and Bruno is one of those players for years, and I've spoken about it on the pod quite a lot this year, that I've just not ever really loved as an FPL asset, barring kind of the COVID season. I know that's probably just my own thing, and maybe I need to kind of reevaluate that. But I just, the fixtures not being particularly great. I don't know. There's something about it, despite the experience being good. That I don't know. I haven't got the feels for it, and especially if we're in the sort of a low EO zone when you're trying to kind of spike a bit of variance with the Saka replacement. I do kind of just like going with Arsenal really for this.
Yeah.
But we shall see. One of the biggest problems to bring us on to Trent. If I did get Odegaard and I wanted Trent as well, I'd have to sell Robinson immediately. So the week after buying him, I'd have to sell him, which does seem a bit weird. But I mean, I do think with Trent,
situation changes though.
Yeah, situations change. I think it's absolutely fine if that does happen. Like, I could get Castagna in a couple of weeks. No harm done. Whatever, would be a hit. But I mean, I think there might be a few of those flying around. It's funny how these little butterfly effects work, right? Like, I give Robinson over Castagna because I just like Robinson. He's got more license to attack. Castagna
was not good today, by the way.
Yeah,
he's getting dropped the second they can.
Missing a bit of match fitness, and also he kind of does tend to. We saw at Leicester as well. He's the one who's more likely tasked with tucking in to be a free on the attack in the attacking phase. So, I mean, that's how I get to Trent effectively. And I do think that Trent and Salah is the ideal Liverpool 2 right now. Van Dijk absolutely fine, but it's a lot of money for basically clean sheets and a bit of attacking threat. But I mean, Trent, Sam, I mean, are you thinking of running to him with this kind of situation? Is it an unlocked opportunity for you to go back?
Yeah, it has a bit, but I've got no money in the bank, literally zero. So I can't do something like a Bruno or an Odegaard, I don't believe. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'm like 0.1 short if I went Odegaard, and then get Trent in for just a -4. So there is an alternative we haven't discussed today. In fact, two alternatives for Saka that we haven't discussed today that I do really like. One, you're going to probably call me crazy, but I think it might be my move. Both Ismail Assar, who've just been talked about in the comments a little bit, I do really like. Good fixtures for a long time, and actually really decent data too. At 5.7 and under 1% owned, that won't be the case by the end of this week running up to game week 18. But a very decent player who's getting very good minutes now for Palace. He's really settled into that side and has a pivotal role to play for them. So that's the big downgrade in terms of funds. And obviously at that point, you can upgrade any defender to Trent very easily. The other one that I'm tempted by is going straight back to Brian Mbeumo. Now, looking at the fixtures, and everyone's going to call me crazy, I get it. Looking at the fixtures, 3 home games against the 3 worst teams you can play at home. So Arsenal, Liverpool, City. I can't remember which order, but in the next 5, they've got all 3 of them at home. But Brentford's home record, I genuinely think they score in at least 2 of those games, if not all 3. And then the other 2 games are away at Brighton, away at Southampton. I think that given the way that Brentford play with the 2 striker system, so back 5 against the bigger teams, probably will at home, caveated also by the fact they've got 2 pretty decent games in the next 5 as well. I really like it. I can see that working out well, and he's just cheap enough that it doesn't ruin my structure, and I can probably get back to Saka a little bit more easily in the future, whilst also enabling me to get to Trent for someone like a Greaves or a Rico Lewis coming out, which, let's be honest, he's been just absolutely terrible. Even with the fixtures to come, I don't back them to keep that many clean sheets. So that's really tempting me at the moment. And that would be for a -4. So it's a bit painful. The alternative is just to roll it and hope. But I do quite like both of those as options. Do either of those tickle your fancy at all, Tom?
Yeah, so Sarr is penciled in as the Matoma replacement.
Nice.
Give that a couple of weeks for Southampton. I
Yeah.
assume he's going to then get rotated as Glasner plays the B team. But yeah, I think Sarr is definitely in for me. As Sam in the chat has just said about Jared Bowen, I'm not too sure about West Ham right now.
Yeah.
But fair enough if you
But he
do
does
kind of
tick
fancy
along.
him. Yeah, he's a good talisman, Bowen. Every year on year, kind of in and around the kind of 180 mark, 170 mark, and
Yeah.
it has been the sort of period, but Liverpool in 19, City in 20 is nothing to worry about. And then Fulham in 21 and Palace in 22. I mean, they're all okay games. And then Southampton straight away, good carrot, especially if you've got loads of transfers in the back. Bumo, not 100% sure on. I wouldn't mind going back there, honestly. Maybe it's a case of me being like, oh, I've already owned him. Fair play. And the only other one I throw in, and Samuel Dwal, as I've said this in the chat, is a Gordon too. I think
I do quite like that.
Newcastle again have got 3 fairly good fixtures, as we said earlier on with Isak, and I don't mind it if you're tripling up with Newcastle and kind of backing them to continue this imperious attacking form. Then again, fair enough. Lots of routes to points with Gordon as well. Loves to win a penalty, which is very cool. I mean, I think basically in summary, there's loads of bloody options right now. I've laid out why I think Erdegaard's probably the best one. And some of it maybe leans into how many free transfers you got, how enamored you are with buying Trent back, and where you are with the rest of your team. So, for example, if you don't own Ahmad, maybe you might look at Bruno, even though, yes, I know this is probably wrong. And maybe you may look at Bruno with more kind of positivity than I do right now. If you don't own Bumo, as you said, Sam, maybe he's the kind of the one to go back to when he's kind of being sold. Is he suddenly the one that does look actually fairly decent, especially with that Southampton game in 20? Oh, so many bloody options here. There really are. I'll be really fascinated to see how it goes. Just remember that most of these players are going to be low owned, I suppose. Yeah, it'll be a split as one big, massively owned player. That ownership gets dispersed amongst loads of different players. So, I mean, obviously, wish Saka all the best. Hope he's fine from an Arsenal point of view, human point of view, etc., etc. But from an FPL point of view, an injury like this is actually a really exciting thing for FPL in some ways, because it just opens up a lot of doors which otherwise would have remained locked. Hopefully we've helped you in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure that we have, but I think that's probably as good as you can do, really, in terms of weighing up all the different options out there.
Yeah.
All right, so on to transfers this week. Quite a lot going on, and I think a lot of it's going to be kind of focused around the forward area. So in terms of transfers out, we've got Saka, obviously, over 380,000 transfers out already. And then beyond that, it's strikers. Isak's the most transferred in for obvious reasons. I'm guessing a lot of people who have seen enough of Haaland now, still second somehow for transfers out. And didn't realise that many people were playing the game who still owned Haaland. Over 150,000 transfers out for him. And then after that, it's Cunha, Welbeck and Watkins who are all being sold. And Gabriel Jesus, Sam, being brought in time for Christmas. But without Saka, who's going to be supplying the crosses for Jesus? That's the question. Do you like that punt? I don't mind it.
I do quite like it, especially if Saka is out for a while. I know you said obviously the creativity is an issue. It didn't really seem to bother him too much in the past week with Saka off the pitch. So yeah, I can see it working out well. Being a striker is a confidence game, and he clearly has some of that right now. Yeah, he's a decent price. I think is he 6.7 million now, so pretty decent. Last couple of games, obviously both against Palace has looked decent. I'm not obsessed with it. I wouldn't like rip up my team to get there, but at the same time, there's one less spot taken up in that forward line, and Jesus has played well enough that he will probably find his way into the team more often than not now over the next few game weeks. I really don't mind it now that everyone's got a Saka Arsenal spot going. It's okay. I don't think it's amazing, but I don't think it's terrible either at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it just obviously it's quite funny because of the time of year, but
yeah,
it honestly does make a lot of sense, especially if you've got that Arsenal spot freed up. And I think Arsenal needs a fit Jesus, be it as kind of the best impact sub that we've got, or being promoted to a starter, which looks like he may well be. Great carrot of the Ipswich game. So
Yeah, there is that.
I'm absolutely fine with people wanting to go there. Elsewhere, Morgan Rogers being brought back in by lots of people, Sam. Over 100,000 transfers in for him. It's one of those, kind of a bit like Bumo, where part of me just thinks, oh, I'm not sure I want to go back there. But I mean, Villa's fixtures do get a bit better after Newcastle. We've got Brighton and Leicester at home, Leicester game in 20, and then Everton and Arsenal, and then a few more good games kind of around kind of January. And he does seem to just be entrusted to. I mean, I guess he's like very young. He's got the legs, hasn't he? He just seems to be being entrusted to play for Emery, albeit maybe the City game. I mean, it's just an easy game now, isn't it? Maybe we shouldn't be looking at that as a as instructive of anything.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I was about to say he's used his Man City voucher up now, so he's got his big return. I think it's his first double-digit return of the season, so we wouldn't expect hauls like this with 2 attacking returns in every game or anything like that. But at his price, consistently has proven to be very good value for money. And yeah, maybe there is a little bit of regret with me selling him this week. I sold him for Ahmad. I needed that extra 0.1 to get to Isak. So overall, I'm well up on the deal. I'm not going to even pretend I was going to start Rodgers. I would have started Semenyo. But looking back, knowing that Rodgers' fixtures do turn a little bit and Semenyo and Bournemouth's fixtures maybe get a little less positive, there is a part of me that maybe wishes I did the Semenyo out rather than Rodgers out. And there's an argument to say in a couple of game weeks, I could maybe reverse that when the transfers are more in my favour. I don't think it's a massive priority, so I won't be doing it this week or anything like that. But maybe when there's an opportunity and I've got a few spare transfers and maybe need that extra 0.2, 0.3, I could bring in Rodgers for a Semenyo when Semenyo's fixtures do truly run out. For now, though, look, he's a great option at the price and he will enable a lot. And maybe he could even be your Saka replacement if you really wanted to downgrade that position. But he's far from essential. He's not going to get double-digit hauls every single week. He'll get the odd goal, the odd assist, and tick along very nicely for his price. But that's just it. It's for his price. And do have realistic expectations of what a player in and around the sub 6 million category will do for you. They're not all going to be Cole Palmer. But Rodgers is probably one of the best of the lot.
Yeah, I agree. A couple of things. One, BW Splitter in the chat has just mentioned that Jay's some 4 yellow cards. He actually is. I've just checked. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. That runs out in 2 game weeks, right?
Yeah, it's not very long. I mean, you know, how the hell has he managed to accrue those? Barely been on the pitch this year. Wild, absolutely wild. I did not know that. Very, very well pointed out, BW. And you just mentioned players under 6 million and what they can possibly do. If you're watching on YouTube, also on the graphic is a certain João Pedro, who was being sold in as the greatest thing since sliced bread not very long ago. Same week,
moldy sliced bread.
Yeah, neither of them have pulled up trees. João Pedro pulling up loads of trees from the left back position, it's fair to say a lot of the time. How are you feeling about João Pedro at the moment? I know it's probably not in the priority list right now, but similar to me with Matoma, are you looking to maybe move him on in a couple of weeks when Bryson's fixtures also kind of run out?
A little. I think, again, it's a low priority thing, like you say. It's annoying, don't get me wrong, that he seems to have forgotten where the goal is and ends up at left back half the time after we bring him in. But at the end of the day, he is a sub 6 million striker. He is on penalties as well. So I think that can come at any given moment, even with bad fixtures, those can happen. And he'll tick along nicely enough. It's not like he's turned into a rubbish player overnight. It's literally just a matter of time until we see a goal or an assist from him. It's not that he's gone off the boil altogether. Again, you just have to have realistic expectations. He's very much a third striker for me, and I'm expecting less from him than I am the likes of Jackson or Isak. And if he can tick along with the odd assist, the odd goal, then that's probably good enough value for money for me. That being said, if it is consistent blanks all the way through for the next 3 or 4 game weeks, then he is going to end up being a player that will be on the chopping block. Even if he's not a priority now, you can't hold on to a player that's just simply blanking throughout the rest of the season. So there are options near his price point, but
I
I think
wouldn't
the
say
reason
that.
this is
I've got Raul Jimenez, mate. I mean,
well, this is the thing, right? Like there are options, but none of them are really pulling up trees either, and none of them are doing enough to make me really want to just make that sideways move immediately. I think João Pedro is as good an option as a Raul Jimenez, as a Delap, as any of those right now. So I'm in no rush to sell him, even if he himself has been a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I feel you. Cool. So yeah, lots going on, but I feel like a lot of the transfer chat is going to be dominated by what we're going to do with Mr. Saka.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next bit, bold claims. For this week, every week we make a bold claim about what we think may happen and tally up throughout the season. I almost got there this week, Sam. Almost
Very
got there.
close.
There was an early proclamation of victory, which I
Yeah.
have since receded and deleted. My bold claim was that as a happiness hedge, as we call it, just because it's something that I'd done, which could have made me sad, but actually, if it come through on the bold claims, and there's a little bit of happiness, a little bit of bittersweetness. And my kind of bold claims, it was at Slanky Halls versus Liverpool. A haul for us is 10 points plus, and he got 9 points. I was thinking he may sneak a bonus, but nearly never wins you the jackpot on a pokey in Australia, does it? So yeah, it's a no for me. What about you?
Mine was very much a no. This was me after about 8 or 9 pints, I think. So I am sorry for that. But I went with Semenyo to outscore Salah. And yeah, very much didn't happen. I'm glad that didn't happen as someone who benched Semenyo and captained Salah. But again, a bit of happiness hedging there. And yeah, Semenyo got a goal, so it was at least something. At least he got a return. But no, Salah's inevitable. 4 returns for him. He laughs in the face of anyone who doubts him.
Yeah, no, definitely. Right, and then for the week, for Boxing Day, what have you done?
Yeah, well, we've been talking about City and the idea that they could get back to their very best. But the bold claim, being bold as it is, Everton have, I think, is it 4 0-0 draws in their last 7 or something now? Crazy. And
unbeaten.
Yeah, and a lot of clean sheets during the last 2 months or so. Would you put it against them to keep it really tight against City and keep them out for 90 minutes? Not the craziest thing in the world. So, yeah, I'm going Everton clean sheet against Man City, as unlikely as that might have sounded at the start of the season.
If I don't make a defensive transfer this week, there is a very good chance that I just throw Mikalenko on for the lols. Honestly, my defensive options, we'll come on to it in a little bit, are absolute bomb site this week. So there is a good chance that I just play Mikalenko.
I would
see what happens. Yeah.
Did you see Harry bench Mikalenko as well this week? Played Mikalenko, even as a Chelsea fan. Yeah.
Yeah, but he also did a lot of other things which we don't want to.
We don't talk about those.
No, we don't want to kick him out.
He's one of the best managers in the world. I'm not going to start taking the mick. He's very, very good.
He is. It's one of the things that kind of happens every now and again. I taught him everything he knows. Anyway, and over 40 goals for me this week scored in Gameweek 18. I'm just going to assume everyone's knackered and defenses just give up. Lots of goals will be flying in left, right. I just hope so, because I'll be sitting around.
It's a Boxing Day treat. We've had the classics. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll be sitting around eating cheese, drinking beer, watching football. I'm just hoping there's loads of bloody goals, basically. I mean, that's going to be the way it is. And it's over 40 goals scored in Game Week 18. I don't know. The fixtures are sort of there for it. It's not kind of
lots of
as good as it was, but yeah, lots of, especially Arsenal and Liverpool. I mean, I don't know. It could just be an absolute marvel. So that's what I'm going for this week.
I'd love that to be correct.
I think we all do. Right. Okay. What's up next is best captain for the week ahead.
That's a quick one.
Yeah. Can anything stop the juggernaut of Salah? I just. Right now, I know that a friend of the pod, Neil Gupta, has mentioned last week as well. Actually, so two mentions in a row. Captained Isaac for his hat trick, and was obviously sitting pretty, feeling very happy. And then Salah did Salah things effectively. I mean, part of the complaint was obviously you can't do anything particularly fun in this game anymore. I mean, the kind of the riposte to that is that there are certain periods where it's just better to not overthink it, keep it simple. This is one of those times where it's just like, you know what, there's a player who's absolutely killing it. Just let them be the EO vacuum. Let them take all the effective ownership. And that means all of your other players, that's where you get your gains. And just don't worry about the captaincy. And this is like a really good time, and I like it because if it was up to me, I think me, Alex in general, all mentioned it last week. I take captain out of the game. I take all the chips out of the game, but maybe one wild card. But yeah, I'm a boring old fart. But effectively, what happens right now is exactly that. We've all got 2 Mo Salahs that we're playing every week. That's basically what we're doing, and that's absolutely fine with me. If the captaincy is a no-brainer, it means you've got brain space to figure out other things. And this week we've got to figure out the Saka situation. And no, Captain Salah, move on.
There is a question though. We all have 2 Salahs this week. What about a third Salah? Would that sound good?
I'd leave it for game for 24, surely, unless you're
you're
AMing
the manager. Yeah.
I don't know.
Leicester at home.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't crossed my mind purely because I'm a selfish prat and I've used my triple captainship. If you have not, this is actually probably the game, isn't it? Really, to be using it.
It's the only caveat there. If it had a week either side, I think I'd probably be very tempted to do it. And I'm not completely ruling it out. Maybe like 10% tempted to do it. The only problem for me is the fact that he could get taken off a bit early here because there's quite a busy period of fixtures now, and they'll probably want to conserve him a little bit for tougher games. That's the only thing that's playing on my mind. Otherwise, this could be a cricket score. Leicester are so open at the moment, even more so now under Rude. And Salah is obviously in the form of his life. So yeah, 10% tempted. I think some people will be brave and go there, and it could really play out for them. But I you know me, I tend to be a fairly cautious, especially with the chips. I don't tend to throw them at something like that often. But in terms of single game weeks, I don't think I've ever been quite this tempted in a long time.
They're one of the only teams, but there's quite a lot of teams actually, but one of the teams in the cohort of having 2 games, only 2 days gap between game week 18 and game week 19.
That's the problem.
I think you'd be right that you'd be triple captaining, but you probably would be
triple captain.
I'm not going to do the maths, but you'd be probably having 66% of a Salah rather than 100% of a Salah, because you'd be expecting 60 minutes, 70 minutes, something like that. And if the game's won, I'm not sure a slot would do an and take Salah off in the 45th minute or anything like that. But I mean, 60-minute withdrawal could be on in the 59th minute club. Much to Mark's delight, this week you can see it happening. So I think err on side of caution with that, and then with assistant manager, we'll get into that later on next year for sure. I think for you, not having a triple captain, probably triple captain in double game week 24, and then use the assistant manager to a greater benefit elsewhere in the season, because there are going to be loads of runs, and we'll dig into it later on in the year, and where maybe you get a lot more kind of joy out of that, especially with all the little kickers and things like that involved with it. But okay, Salah it is.
Salah,
I'm not sure we're particularly. I'm not sure there's much to particular about that. Cool. All right. So teams and plans. I think maybe we'll do a couple of weeks, just in case we don't do anything between 18 and 19, which is a possibility. We haven't actually figured it out yet. We'll do our best.
So I'll walk through my team going into game week 18 as it stands. It's looking pretty good, but I think all of our teams look pretty good going into game week 18, in fairness. Lots of good home fixtures. Double Arsenal defence, Raya Gabriel. Starting Lewis at home to Everton at the moment. Not enamoured with that, but I think it's fine on paper. It's better than Chelsea away for Robinson anyway. Aston Villa at home for Hall. So again, not expecting a clean sheet there, but he's been in good nick recently and probably a better player to be starting than a Robinson away at Chelsea, and was the plan when I bought in Robinson as well. In the midfield, it's the trio of premiums, Saka being the issue against Ipswich at home, Leicester captain for Salah, Palmer at home to Fulham, Semenyo starts against Crystal Palace at home, with Ahmad currently on the bench away at Wolves. Up front, it's a very familiar front three at the moment of Isak, Jackson and Pedro, all with good home fixtures. Like I said, Ahmad being on the bench is the one thing that's given me pause for thought as to whether or not I can potentially kick the can down the road on Saka, or just take the gamble, of course, and start him, thinking that maybe Arteta is trying to be sneaky. I think the likelihood of that being the case this time is very low. And therefore, I am more tempted than doing that to make a transfer here. And honestly, right now, I think my gut transfer right now is Mbermo back in,
Right,
and then
okay.
I would be very tempted to upgrade probably Rico Lewis to Trent, but I need to think about whether a -4 for those two is actually worth it or not. And I need to be really confident of Saka being out for a while.
I really like that. All options are on the table for you, aren't there? Aren't
Yeah.
they? I mean, I don't think you're not going to lose out too much if you might if there's a player who doesn't show up. That's the only caveat to this. But
Yeah.
I mean, your team is very rollable, and it could be a really kind of astute move in this really hectic period while everyone else is zigging and making a transfer for Saka, for you to be the guy who goes, all right, you know what? Actually, I quite like my squads and it's fine. Maybe I'll back my my conspiracy theorizing that Arteta's just a diabolical genius. But equally, you've
He's
got
certainly
Ahmad come off
diabolical.
you've got Ahmad come off the bench. You're probably going to be absolutely fine with just leaving it for a week, and you're not going to lose out too much because all the players, as we've discussed, who would be brought in, are all going to be low EO anyway. So you're not going to be hurt too much, I guess. So yeah, you've got a really good you've got a really good opportunity potentially to roll it and then reassess next week that a lot of us probably don't have in a lot of ways for whatever reason. But I do really like what you said about bringing in Boomer or bringing in basically anyone, whatever the threshold is.
Yeah.
And then
So
doing
my threshold's around 7.8
okay.
to 7.9 million, something like that. I need to work it out.
So
But yeah,
Bumo, Gordon, one of those sorts of players, or maybe
Yeah.
even a Sar. But I think Sar for Semenyo later on does seem like a bit of a better
Yeah.
move to me.
I agree.
So yeah, I mean, either you kind of just deal with the grief situation once and for all, or you just think, you know what, screw that spot. You very, very, very seldom outside of a COVID outbreak gets bench free. I mean, in my entire FPL career or entire podcasting stint, I've over 8 years, I think outside of COVID, I don't think I ever got to bench free.
I think I might have once ever.
Yeah,
And,
it just
and
doesn't
once ever is
happen.
fine. You can play with effectively 10 in that case. It's really not that big a deal.
Yeah. So Raul Jimenez got 0 this week. So I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
it
You've still
happens,
got a
right?
massive green.
It happens, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I'd be torn between. It's weird, isn't it? I'm torn for you. I'm torn between a -4 and a 0,
So
and a
am I.
roll.
Yeah,
That's
so
where
am I.
it's very very unusual to be in that situation. I've got to say, but
Yeah,
yeah,
stick or twist.
you can roll this and then be one of the few people next week who's going to end up with a couple of transfers, a bit more information, and then you can kind of take your time about it. Issue is you missed the Leicester game for Liverpool.
Yeah.
That probably might be the sticking point, which would push me towards doing Saka to a Boomo or a Gordon or whatever you decide, and then bringing Trent. So I think that I'd narrowly favoured the Trent move.
Okay.
If you're going that way.
Interesting. Yeah, bit more depth there as well in case there are any other issues. Again, knowing that it's a quick turnaround too. Yeah, I'll have a think. But yeah, I'm quite tempted by the -4 there. But anyway, let's have a chat about yours.
Oh God. So all looking okay. I'm in the 3-5-2, so I do have Ahmad on the pitch. I've got Raul Jimenez, who's probably going to play against Chelsea, but that's a very good
Yeah.
first bencher. Ahmad versus Wolves, I'm going to play that. Matoma in midfield this is almost definitely his last game for me. Palmer, Saka still on the pitch. God knows don't know what we'll do with him. Salah the captaincy. Up front, Isaac and Jackson double. Jackson doing Jackson things. We didn't mention that earlier, but Jackson doing Jackson things against Everton.
Yeah.
2 big chances missed, I think it was. And Raya in goal. But my main issue, Sam, is the defence. It's an utter disaster. Honestly, Gabriel versus Ipswich, good. Then Hall versus Aston Villa, probably okay.
Yeah, I'm happy enough with that.
It is utter dross. It is Van Useless or Van Hecker versus Brentford at home, definitely conceding. Robinson versus Chelsea away. In isolation, fine, but I own 2 of their attackers. So do I want to be kind of doing that? You always want to go with the Planet FPL style all-in strategy. So I don't really want to be playing Robinson and then Mikolenko City away. I'm very tempted to play Mikolenko here. But I look at that crappy config I think there could be a bit of a value in a hit, effectively. So one
Mm.
would be the Trent route. So that would just be right. Robinson hoiked out immediately. And that's the only way I could do it. It is a bit awkward. It's one of those that I don't like doing. And I had to kind of go for because the effective venture of Robinson has elevated such level where I'd have to look at an Anderson or a Castagna in pretty much straight away. Do I really care about Trent that much? Well, for the double game week, I'm going to probably want him. So is this the
Yeah, good
time that
point.
I just do it? I could actually buy Van Dijk without having to sell Robinson. I can do Van Hecker to Van Dijk, the Van to the Van. I don't know. I was not feeling it with Van Dijk really. I know that it's you could score a goal from a header sort of thing. But I just don't. I don't know. I feel like that's a lot to pay for what he actually is. Yes, good X minutes, and this is maybe the time to be buying those big scored centre backs. So I don't know. The other one that I've really looked at this evening actually is your man Munoz, Sam. If I'm not
Yeah.
going the full hog. So you were saying to me a couple of weeks ago when you're looking at him that the XG is scandalous, and it is. It's the highest for end defender this year at 2.7. Milenkovic at Palace isn't too far off, and his XG per 90 is not that far off Trent, so he's second for that. I did have a look for the match logs as well, just to make sure he wasn't one of those players that you're looking at and he's had like one game where he's just got 1.5
No, it's
XG or something.
consistent.
Yeah. It's like 1 or 2 shots per
Standout
game.
ones, yeah.
And he's actually had more big chances this year than Gabriel, I saw on the scout,
Wow.
for what it's worth. But we know he's not the best at shooting. We do know he's yellow card magnet, and we also know that Bournemouth is not the best fixture next up for bringing him in for.
Yeah.
Need to really spike variance, but really good fixtures for a while. Barring the Chelsea home game and Southampton next week. So potentially a really good differential to help me on defensively in the next few weeks, because I hate owning Van Heck. Now he's had his rest, the suspension, he should be good to go. He has everything in a package that's quite good for a cheap variant spike gamble, effectively. But I just don't know. I just don't know. I think that if I'm taking the hit, maybe I should get. I don't know. I don't know whether it's worth, because Robinson, I think everyone's going to own, and the fixtures after Chelsea are all good.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Do just muddle through without the hit, because you're selling the clean sheet anyway, aren't you? If you take a hit, so I'm basically the whole thing would hang on Munoz scoring a goal. To make
defenders are rarely worth a hit on 1 week.
Exactly.
I'd prefer to go in with like an iffy 11th man, that being your third defender, rather than taking a hit and hoping.
Yeah. So I'm currently sitting on the side of just Saka out for probably Ødegaard as my favoured move. If I do want to get Trent in, then maybe I figure out a way to do it later on. But that's kind of where I am right now. I feel like I've kind of somehow managed to get myself down a bit of a cul-de-sac, because I haven't had the benefit of the Southampton game for Jimenez that I was hoping for. I've got fires in terms of Matoma and Van Hecker. Van Hecker can sit on my bench after a while. But yeah, it's quite a risky situation in some ways, but equally as well, I've got most of the players in place that I want to have. It's just defense is absolutely crap this week with that Chelsea game for Fulham.
Yeah.
So
but defense is generally pretty poor anyway. Like, you're not expecting big points from them, so and no one is effectively. So it's one poor player in your back line. Hall's fine, I think. I think it's okay.
Yeah. I think that might just be where I go with that. Just do the Saka move. I definitely see. Definitely there is some thought that I do it with this side of Christmas and just forget about it.
Yeah.
And just kind of make a decision. I won't make a decision tonight. So there's no I think I've got 0 point. It's worth checking as well, by the way, if you are a Saka owner, just make sure that you're not losing value if he does drop, because I think that there is a likelihood. So live FPL is definitely the best one by miles now. I'd say for price predictions, just have a look on there.
Very good.
Just have a look. But yeah. yeah, I think that'll be where I go, and then just the rest of it muddle through. Taking the hit and recovering from that over Christmas is going to be a pain in the ass. So I think it might just be that I just play Van Hecker or just shove Mikalenko on and hope for the best this week. But hey, you may speak to me next week. I'll be like, hey, you know what? I've got Trent, because owning him and having him, because I'm going to want him eventually. Owning him now with the Leicester game as the carrot, that's kind of the other side of it. And then if I lose Robinson, whatever.
I've just remembered one of my best Trent memories is Leicester on Boxing Day. I'm pretty sure it's Boxing Day. Wasn't that when he got his like 21 points?
21 points, yeah.
21
points. I think we all sold him for some reason. I can't remember what the circumstances were.
I had him still. I think I had him, which is why I remember it fondly. But I remember being in Spain, watching that goal go in and thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. That could be a reason. That's a nice sentimental reason.
It's good. And that's what kind of makes me think, well, okay, if I can't get to Trent, I can do Van Hecker to Van Dijk, I suppose, because then again, I'm in that situation where I've got Liverpool defender coverage, hope to spike variance with I can't remember where Van Dijk is in the XG for defenders. It's
very low.
Great, is it? Yeah. It isn't great. Yes,
but it can happen. He's still up for set pieces, so it's just a matter of whether they find his head or not.
I'm sure I saw Kanate's outperforming him for XG this year, so it's not like Milenkovic is the one. If you're looking for big skull centre back, I don't know. I'll think about it over the next kind of couple of days. I do think kind of this could be a good opportunity, as I'm sure you'll hear many times if you're listening. If you do listen to other content creators too, I think this would be the week where you'd be using it as an excuse to buy Trent in. There's some awkwardness for me about selling a player I've just bought and then trying to figure it out when I know that everyone else will have that player that I've had to sell to get Trent. But it is what it is, and I think you're probably right with your sage advice. Just cop a bad week with Van Hecker. I know I'm playing for a 1 or 2 pointer. Just deal with it that way.
It's not the end of the world.
Nah. What we expect from defence, honestly. I don't know. I just look at a Leicester game and think, well, Trent come out of that with a double-digit haul easily.
Yeah, so, could do. But we think that a lot of the time about a lot of players, and then they don't. So it's circular, isn't it? It's cyclical. They do happen though. He won't be 50-60% EO though, so it's not going to kill you if it does happen.
I don't know. Well, let's see what the sentiment is. By the time we get to nearest next deadline.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
There we go. Indeed. That was really good fun. It was meant to be a short one, but we just nattered on for ages and off last time that I had a lot more to talk about, but I've really enjoyed myself. Hopefully you have too, Tom. And thank you all so much if you've been listening along. We have been Who Got the Assist. You can find us on Blue Sky at WGTA or myself at FPL Pricey, on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at WGTA_FPL and FPL Pricey for me. And on Instagram or Threads at WGTA.FPL. Again, FPL Pricey on there for me too. If you did enjoy the pod, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a follow on any of those channels, but also if you could give the pod a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. Or, of course, if you're watching along live on YouTube, which quite a few of you are today, we'd really appreciate it if you could just drop a like and also hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. All of those things really do help us out. And because this will be the very last time I get to talk to any of you before, a very Merry Christmas if you do celebrate it from me.
Thanks, Sam. We hope you enjoyed the pod. Thanks so much for your company this evening. If you're watching on YouTube, quite a lot of people in, which was obviously lovely to see. And we hope we assisted you to unbox some points on Boxing Day. Let's see how that goes. We'll be back at some point soon. And make sure you stay subscribed to keep informed. Happy Christmas from me too. And if this is a difficult time for you, I hope it's a peaceful one. If you don't celebrate, I hope you have a restful time. And we'll speak to you very, very soon. All the best.
Oh, it's a goal. Who got the assist? Who got the assist?
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.